Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a former Boeing 737 pilot and a member of the PMDG 737 tech team. In today's video, let's talk about everything that's new with the upcoming PMDG 737 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And we're going to start right with the model. So the entire model of the airplane has been converted to a native Flight Simulator 2024 model. What this means is that it is going to blend in a lot nicer with the simulator and especially with the lighting conditions in the aircraft. So right now we got a bright afternoon winter lighting over here. Let's change that to a morning twilight though and see how the model is going to adapt. So I'll just move that over here so that we can have a look. As you can see, the model really blends in perfectly with the different times of the day that you're going to find in the simulator. Now, when we're already talking about the model, we also have to talk about animations. And for those, let me first of all go back to a lovely daylight setting over here, and then let's have a look into some of the stuff that is new in the flight deck. First of all, some of the long-standing feature requests from you guys have been fulfilled, so you're able to open the flight deck window now, you are able to actually wipe rain from your windshields using wipers, and you're able to open and close the flight deck door. Now, on top of that, a lot of immersion features have been added. For example, many clutter objects in the aircraft, so you're able to choose between different drinks that you might want in your airplane. You're able to place your flight bag in the flight deck, you are able to, if you don't put that guard in place over here, throw the manuals out and perhaps find some unpleasant surprises, at least judging by how long they've probably been lying in there. And you can also place a lot of clutter objects. For example, up here you can put the jump seat out and make it a little bit more lively by placing some more objects down here, for example. So that way you can really bring the flight deck to life with a lot of different customization options. Now, that much about model changes. Let's go into the cabin now and have a look at one of the very obvious changes, which is the passenger cabin. So the passenger cabin has been completely redone, and you can see a lot of detail has been added to everywhere within the aircraft over here. That goes from easy things like the ability to operate the water boilers over here to things like a nice surprise effect when you try to open the lavatory door. Occupied. Alright, now let's go ahead and have a look into the actual passenger cabin. Now, for a little bit of privacy for your flight attendants, you are able to open and close the curtain over here at your desire. 3 different cabin models are provided. You got the high-density economy cabin, which is mostly used by low-cost carriers, such as, for example, Jet2. And no, we're not going on a Jet2 holiday just yet. Then you also have a lesser density economy model, and then you also have a 2-class model that also includes a business class. Together with all of those models, you are getting appropriate weight and balance configurations and the ability to adjust all of those through the Universal Flight tablet. Now, let's go ahead and just take a seat over here and have a look at the level of detail that we find around the cabin. So, I'm sure that some of you will say, well, but the Phoenix cabin is a little bit more detailed. And while it's true that it is, number one, not a lot in my personal opinion here, but I do absolutely understand that opinions may differ. But most importantly, I think PMDG struck a perfect balance between the visuals together with the performance of the aircraft. So the performance of the PMDG 737 is just absolutely amazing, as it has always been, and they have continued that trend with the new cabin in the aircraft. It is there, it looks fantastic, but most importantly, it doesn't really affect your performance too much, which is just great. Now, going into the aft galley, we can see something that's new over here as well, and that is the flight attendant panel. Now, you've got a copy of this in the front and a copy of this in the back, and I kind of went to the back here because it's easier to show you what's going on. So let's actually change this to a nighttime setting now. So here we are. You can see a couple of things in the cabin already, and with that I don't mean the light that's reflecting from the surfaces outside, even though that's kind of looking cool, isn't it? But let's go ahead and have a look. So first of all, we are going to turn all the lights off. then this is basically what the cabin looks like, which is influenced by the fact that the lights from the airport are kind of shining through here, which is unfortunately one of the FS2024 features right now. But let's go ahead and have a look into what we can do. So first of all, we'll turn the entry area lights on. Then we got the workstation lights for the front and the aft galley. And now we got a lot of different settings we can choose for the passenger cabin itself. So let's start with the boarding configuration. We're going to turn this on, which is basically maximum brightness. And we're going to set that on both zone controls. So this is the full brightness that you're going to get in the cabin. Now for takeoff and landing, you know that the cabin is always getting dimmed. So here's how you can do this. Now, we do have cruise setting down here, which is a little bit brighter than that. And there is the night and sleep setting, which is turning off a lot of the major lighting in here. And then, obviously, you got the meal and beverage service, which just makes it a bit more brighter so that you can see what you're actually eating. Then we got white bright, which is, again, kind of a very, let's say, awakening light. So if you put that one on, then you're definitely going to get your passengers awake. You can also control the zones individually, which you can see down here. So let's set the boarding lighting in the forward zone, and then we can, for example, set it off in the aft zone. And like that, you have full control over the lighting. If you don't want to bother with it yourself, you can always turn on automatic cabin lighting, which is simply going to hand control over to the flight attendants, who are going to adjust the cabin accordingly. Now, let's just go ahead and turn all of this off again and go back to daylight settings so that we can have a look into a couple more of the new features. So next up, we are just going back through the cabin over here, and I know that sometime in the past a lot of you were like, why don't we get opening overhead lockers? Well, you can open them now, and most importantly, you can open them in two different ways. The first of all is the way that it's intended to be opened by the manufacturer, and that is simply by using the associated click spot on the associated handle. The second way to open this is the way that most flight simmers are probably going to do it in their career flying the PMDG 737, and that's by doing a hard landing. So the lockers are responding to your touchdowns, and just like in the real 737, and believe me, I've seen that a lot, they are going to drop open when you do a hard landing. Don't ask me how I saw it. I did, of course, never do those hard landings. That was always the colleagues doing them. Always. Alright, now from here we are back in the forward galley, and I think we can just about go outside to have a look at another one of the new things in our cabin. And now we are going on a Jet 2 holiday to the wheel well. So first of all, you can see how lovely all the metal parts are shining here and how everything reflects very nicely, which is one of the results of converting the entire model to a native FS2024 model. Now, apart from things like the wheels actually reacting to the weight on them, we also have a lot of new details in the wheel well now. So if you go in here, you can see that things have really gotten cluttered in here, just like it is in the real world wheel well of a 737. Couple things to notice over here are the fire extinguishing bottles, the reservoir of the standby hydraulic system, and then you got the main hydraulic systems up here. Just to show you a couple of examples of what there is in the wheel well of a Boeing 737 that PMDG now models as well. Now from here, let's go back into the inside and let's talk about another new feature of the aircraft, and that is the sound set. So the sounds have been completely reworked and have been adapted into a whole new system. Now, I think sounds basically have to speak for themselves, so best to watch some of the videos of the aircraft flying. But one of the things that I can show you in here is that you not only have the standard sound set, which is how a camera would hear the aircraft, but you also have how pilots would hear the aircraft in the form of an ANR sound set that you can activate by clicking on the headset over here. And that is really how a pilot would hear the aircraft. So my recommendation here for most realistic operation is that you put the headset on by the time that you are starting the engines or by the time that you are completing the before start procedures. and then you really have the most realistic sound set here. Now, I do know that flight simmers love sound, so I'm going to put the ANR headset back off again, but this is really a nice way of experiencing the airplane like a pilot would actually experience it. Now, let's talk about two more major features of the airplane. The first one is the addition of data link. So as you can see, the data link function is now operative. You got all the ACAS functions over here that you would expect, such as ATIS requests, clearance requests, TWIP request, which is basically the weather requests, and so on. And then you also got the CPDLC function of the data link system operative, which you can use with either the Hoppy system, with Say Intentions AI, and as far as I remember, also with Beyond ATC. So lots of data link integration going on for you guys now. Now, here is news. A couple of you have asked why you are only modeling the old style CDU together with the aircraft. And the good news is that the FANS MCDU, that's the Future Air Navigation MCDU, is currently still work in progress, but is coming to the PMDG 737 for Flight Simulator 2024. It's not going to make the initial release. The initial release will be with the traditional CDU, as you know it from the PMDG 737, but the FANS MCDU together with Route 2 and all its associated features are going to be added with an update to the aircraft. Now from here, let's have a look at one of my personal favorite features. That's the ability to move the electronic flight bag to the front so that you can do FMC inputs and at the same time see the nav display for checking your route and everything you need on the electronic flight bag, such as your flight plan, your charts, and so on. Now, we talked a lot about stuff that's been added that you can kind of obviously see. Now let's talk about some of the stuff that is optional. And we're going to start with the way that the airplane looks immediately in front of you. So Boeing offers 3 different versions of the glare shield, and the one you see over here without any buttons is what most airlines have installed, and that one has now been added to the PMDG 737. But that's not all. The new clock has also been added down here, which is the one that is much more common with aircraft nowadays than it used to be back in the day when the first PMDG 737 was developed. Now, you can actually change all of those, so let's have a look. We go into the options, PMDG setup, aircraft and equipment, and by going to one of the last pages over here, we can change the chronograph. So you got the new, or you got the basic glare shield with a new clock. Then you can obviously install the plate with the mic button only, which is what you find with quite a couple of airlines. And then you also have the ability to change to the old type clock, together with the full clock option on the glare shield as well. So quite a couple of new configurations that you got right over there. But that is not all of the new options we got available. So next up is the transponder, and as you can see, type-in type transponder has been added together with TCAS above and below modes. So that way you can now choose whichever one suits you best between the old style transponder and the new style transponder down here. Now next up is an option that I personally really pushed for, and that is the option to have the nav mode automatically arm for missed approaches. So it may look a little bit strange at times, and it certainly looked very strange to me when I first started flying the 737, but the ability to enable this mode means that on approach, once you're past the final approach fix, you may see LNAV up here, and you also see LNAV in white down there, which basically means that the airplane is prepared to automatically follow the go-around track if a go-around is executed. On top of that, the ability to remove the fuel flow indicators has been added to the display unit, which a lot of especially early 737s did not have. So you can add and remove those on the upper display unit over here now. Next up are the hydraulic pumps. So the 737 is delivered with 2 different sets of hydraulic pumps, and you can switch between the Vickers and the ABEX pumps now. This is not going to make too much of a difference for you flying the aircraft, but it does make a difference in the sounds and in the reaction speeds and stuff like that, all of which is simulated, even though it's hardly visible, because you mainly notice by the lights going on and off quicker and by the hydraulic gauge down here responding in a different manner. Now, the window overheat lights can also be adjusted now between the green and the amber lights. So if we turn those on for a second over here and do the power and overheat test, you can switch between green and amber window heat lights. Now, obviously that's just a small little thing, but little things are what's making an airplane, aren't they? Now, two more simulator options have been added as well. The first one is the ability to store your fluids when you leave the aircraft. So oil, hydraulic and fuel are going to be stored properly when you are operating the aircraft, so that you better have a constant eye on what's going on so that you don't accidentally run out. The other new option that's been added down here is the option to automatically set the cabin altitudes. What this does is to automatically configure the cabin pressurization controller up here. So things like the cruise level or the landing elevation can be set automatically with that, which is a topic that flight simmers have every now and then come up with when they didn't know either where to find that data or how to set it properly. Now, those are a selection of my favorite new items that have been added to the aircraft, but they are by far not everything that's been done and worked on. So let's talk about some of the fixes that have been done to the airplane. First of all, there is pitch and power. So the pitch and power on approach have been corrected so that you get a proper final approach configuration now. This is something that's only been possible due to the new Flight Simulator 2024 flight model, and wasn't possible back in 2020. So how does the airplane approach now? Quite basic and easy. Flaps 30, which is standard for most approaches, you need 1 degree pitch and you need gross weight minus 4%. So if you have a gross weight at 60 tons, you subtract 4, so you end up at 56% and 1 that you need for the approach. Flaps 40, you need about 0 degrees pitch and gross weight equals N1, so at 60 tons you need 60% and 1 on the final. This is something that's possible in FS2024, wasn't possible in 2020 because that would have corrupted the cruise model of the airplane. Don't ask me why and how, but it's working now, which is nice. So next up is the engine start. The engine start has been completely overhauled and now exactly reflects the way that a CFM56 engine starts on a 737. Now, as a pilot, I can't say how happy I am about it, because it was something that always hit my eyes, even though I know that for flight simmers that was probably a little bit less noticeable. Now, the taxi thrust requirement has been corrected as well. The airplane is going to start accelerating on an even surface at typical weight with about 30% N1 now compared to the 35 to 40 that you needed previously, so that you can use a proper range of taxi thrust. The EFIS control panel logic has also been worked on. One of the primary points of critique on the previous PMDG 737 was that it took so long to set the minimum. Well, that was because of the way the logic on the EFIS CP was implemented. So, in the old style, this were rotary switches, so you just kept scrolling on them with your mouse wheel, pretty much like you see right now. But in the real world, those are drag and hold switches, so let's try to increase our minimum to 1000 feet here. If you just click the switch, you can see changes in small steps, which equals moving the switch a little bit in the real world. However, if you move it a bit more, you can see that it's changing in steps of tens, and if you hold this for a little bit longer, you will notice that it changes faster and faster, making it really quick to set a high minimum, just like in the real airplane. The same also applies to the QNH, which you can either change small steps or in large steps. So things are getting really, really easy there. Now, very small thing, but something that I do appreciate, is the fact that the approach page has been changed so that it now includes the ILS identifier down here as well. And on top of that, many more small fixes have been done to the aircraft. I think the changelog is a couple hundred items now, and, well, it just feels like an overhauled, polished aircraft. Now, obviously, it is still using some of the old code, because why would you exchange a perfectly running electrical system So for this reason there will be a major discount available for owners of the previous version of the PMDG 737, which basically covers the development costs of all the new features and making this a native Flight Simulator 2024 aircraft. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you found this one interesting. Be sure to leave your feedback in the comments underneath the video. As always, like, comment and subscribe, and then I'm really looking forward to see you all again on the next one.